So this may seem like a philosophical question. Why do we do, what we do? And I'm going to try to answer that, philosophical question as I go through the slides. Um, Essentially, I'm going to talk at a very high level, a life insurance company's economics. By no means, I have a degree or a knowledge in economics or finance, but this is based on what I have seen and what I have learned along the way working in finance IT. Uh, so starting at 9 o'clock in this diagram, policy holder, I'll go in the clockwise direction in terms of who brings the money to the company, where does the money go, and then what's the sort of flow of that money and how does it relate to what we do. So policy holder, our end customer, the folks who are paying for the products, are the one who are bringing money into the company, which says that look, I want to buy an insurance product, or I want to buy annuities or whatnot, right? A wealth management product, and this policy holders money comes into our company, or any insurance company. Insurance moving to next block in a clockwise direction. uh, Insurance companies invest that money, right? So a lot of the money goes back and forth between the company and the investment what our company makes. Uh, and depending on the need of our insurance company, we do divest, we do bring money back from our investment. Um, the next block is our expenses, benefits. Benefits we have to pay to our policy holder who gave us money in the first place. And then profits. The profits we need to we need to share with our we need to share with our shareholders. If you have seen Roy Gori's presentation, three items: policy holder, which come in the benefit question. Our customers are in the first block, benefits. Expenses, that's really us. No, we are an expense to the company. The salaries which get paid to us, the desk on which we sit, the computer we use, or the server farms we utilize, they are all expenses. So that's second part of the equation is us, no expenses. And the third part is profit. That's where the shareholder comes in. So folks who have bought shares of our company do need to reap some profit, and that's where the profit goes. And the last block, which is generally a lot of people do not see, is the reserves. Insurance companies do need to hold reserve, and that's a very large chunk of our economics, is the reserves of insurance companies. Uh, and again, the money goes back and forth in reserves. We do add money to reserves, and I'll tell you why. And then we take money out of reserves, essentially to give back the benefit to policyholder. So moving to very basic accounting equation which applies to a public insurance company, which is what we are, is asset, and this is a algebraic equation. So no matter what, you have to balance it. When one side goes up, other side how to change. There is no choice. So that equation is asset, which is equal to liabilities plus capital and surplus. And liabilities are, for an insurance company, to a most degree are in reserves. Uh, so study by Loma has suggested that insurance companies' liability reserves account for 75% of a liability of an insurance company. So it's a fairly large chunk, which is in fairly large chunk of liabilities are reserves. And assets are mostly invested in fixed income. such as government bonds, such as bonds and mortgages, which tend to give you a good steady supply of low risk investment money. And that's where our company and that's where typically most insurance company invest money. Uh, there are a number of accounting bases or financial reporting bases. I'm going to touch on this very high level basis and why, what are those bases and what do they, whom do they serve? Um, in United States, uh, insurance is regulated by state government. Uh, and state government, each one of them have own set of rules, and in order for insurance company to do to be able to do a business in all state, all these state government come together, and their body is called NAIC, which is National Association of Insurance Commissioners. So NAIC has a reporting basis called STAT basis, statutory basis, and it is by NAIC, it is for NAIC regulators. These are the folks who make set of rules for insurance companies, and their focus is, can an insurance company pay to its policyholders or the beneficiaries of this policyholder uh, in the case of a event which requires a payment. So their focus is, somewhat razor sharp. Can we pay? It's really ability to pay. It is more towards the solvency of a company. Is an insurance company financially solid so that it can pay? And because of that, they have a balance sheet orientation. Uh, the next is IFRS. IFRS is International Financial Regulatory Standard. It is by IASB, and I might be off, is International Association Standard, International Accounting Standard Board. John Hancock has been following IFRS, or John Hancock and Manulife has been following IFRS for last 2 plus years. Prior to that, John Hancock was following US GAAP, which is a which is a US accounting standard. IFRS is global in nature. We follow IFRS 4, which is current IFRS standard for insurance companies, and eventually in year 2021 we will be moving to IFRS 17, which came out 2 months ago. IFRS is for investors. The focus of IFRS is towards the earnings. Are we making enough money? Is the profit what we are showing? Are they comparable to a profit which is shown by some other company? So it is for investors. It is for the analyst who review our company, and it is for lenders, who give money to us. Is our investors, right? And because of that, IFRS is more income statement oriented. And how did you do this year? How did you do this period? And the last is tax, which is IRS, and IRS is more focused on in terms of, are we paying enough taxes? Are we paying the right taxes on our earnings? So as I said, liabilities are mostly reserve. So our company liabilities are mostly reserves. There are two types of liabilities. One is active life. The active life liabilities are for policies which are in force, such as long-term care policy. Active life liabilities are for unearned premium. They are for account balances. People who have people who have kept money with us, we need to have reserves for those, and they are also benefit reserves. For life insurance policy, we need to hold reserves to make sure that we are able to pay them in the case of event which has occurred for the payment. And there are claim reserves. Claim reserves are IBNR, which is a date has occurred but it has not reported, which is called incurred but not reported. Uh, so IBNR reserves are we have to hold it because it takes time for beneficiaries of the policy to communicate to us that event has occurred. And those are also claim reserves for LTC policies which are on claim and we are making payment. So reserves fall in two categories: active life and claim reserves. So I got 6 minutes left, and I'm gonna run through this slide really fast. In general, reserve computation is done based on two very broad principle. Um, the first principle is NLP method, net level premium method, which says that you have a steady state of premium coming in, uh, and you adjust your reserves based on that steady average annual premium, which is called a NLP premium. And the second underlying principle is probability and laws of large number, that we are not insuring one policy, we are insuring hundreds and thousands of policies. And as that number grows, of number of policies we are reserving, um, the the probability of achieving the target of what actuarial computation call for gets higher and higher. Uh, Nevertheless, it's an estimate, but that estimate becomes more and more accurate. So if you have two policies, the estimate is going to be much lower versus if you have 200,000 policies. The estimate is going to be much more accurate than what you would have with two policies. So the way at a very high level, the reserve computation works is in this case, I'm assuming NLP of $150 every year. Uh, at the year one, we started with no reserves because we didn't have that policy. The policy holder paid $150 in NLP. We assumed the benefit of $50 because initially the risk of making the payment is lower, so you build your reserves. So $150 dollars of NLP, $50 went in assumed benefit, and the rest of the money went in reserves. So that's where we have your $150 split. So as we go into year 2 and year 3 and year 4, we keep on adding money into reserve, but the addition of money becomes smaller and smaller. So as you go in the graph from left to right, each year you add money into reserve and you build the reserve. Eventually, as they say in taxes and death, both you cannot avoid. So at the year 5, the policy holder dies, and then we release reserves, and at the end of that period the reserves are zero. So that's how at a very broad level reserve computation work. Is you have a set NLP premium, NLP dollar coming in the reserve computation. Each year you allocate money and you build your reserve. In the initial period you build lot more reserve, in the later period you take down reserve. So in the graph, on the left side of the graph you're growing reserve, and on the right side of the graph you're taking down reserve, and eventually for each and every policy, you start with zero reserve and then you end with zero reserve. So if you look at on the table, year one, start of the reserves are zero, and at the end period, year five, end of the reserves are zero. This is a very basic concept in terms of reserve computation. Reserve calculations are extremely difficult. We employ about 6,000 to 8,000 CPU cores every quarter to do reserve calculation of our company. Uh, at the end of year 2005, when we had just migrated to cloud, uh, we increased our computing capacity so much that finance single-handedly uh, capped Manulife, single-handedly reached the cap of Manulife's Azure subscription. Um, reserve computations are highly complicated, they are highly mathematical, and they have a lot of computing requirement. So I'm at the end of my time. So Brett, I'm gonna stop, and I'm giving you back, 3 minutes.